I'll jump in really quickly and add to that by saying that one of the things that we have in common is socioeconomics. And to that matter, looking at it from a positive light, one of the things, if you look at the national landscape, you look at the largest sectors of growth amongst entrepreneurs, it's in the African American Latino segment. So we have that in common. And if you look at programs across the country, if banks are smart, those are the communities that they will be speaking to, because if you follow the national trend, those are where the entrepreneurs that are going to come from for tomorrow.
Barbara?
One of the things I think we have in common is the lack of visibility of African American and Latino leaders in the general community. Randy, I recall you talking at a workshop some time ago that you've been invited to sit on some 22 boards last year. Well, you are very talented, and I'm sure you're a wonderful board member, but there are many other African Americans who are well qualified to sit on boards. But the general community just doesn't know who the African American leaders are. I think of when we look at Latino leaders, again, about a half dozen come to mind, and there is a whole wealth of Latino leaders who, for some reason, we do not have visibility in the general community. So I think there needs to be some intentionality about us together raising our visibility, because one of the challenges that we have is that we are not at the tables where decisions are being made about our future in our community. And until we raise that visibility, I think our voices continue to be lost in this city.
There will now be a collection?
Or a protest.
Okay. We'll keep it moving. Of course, you've heard it in the African American community and certainly in the Latino community, but there's a lot of excitement about the fact that we have an African American president, and we have a pending Latino Supreme Court justice. And many people kind of believe, okay, we've arrived and our collective work is done, and we can kind of rest on our laurels. But you heard me talk earlier about all these staggering statistics as it relates to poverty and education and so forth. So this kind of builds on Barbara's question, but how can we, realizing that all politics are local, right? How can we ensure that people in this room do in fact have a seat at the table to push the envelope and fight for some of the issues that we all care about that affect both communities?
Well, I'd say first and foremost, we've got to vote, because we have collective strength in this city. You put our two percentages together and we could dominate the politics in this community. And not to say that we are all of one accord on any political issue, but we have collective power that I think we have not realized. So voting, I think, becomes step number one. But then I think, too, we have to identify where the tables of power are and how we find our way into those places. And I can't say that it's going to be easy, because those that hold the power are not going to readily be open, perhaps, to inclusion. So we've got to find some new strategies where we make that inclusion happen.
I would add, I was privileged on Saturday to hear President Bill Clinton speak, and I was, some of you read what I wrote and some of the things that I've been writing this week, but I was impressed with his magnetism and his charisma. But he spoke about communitarian spirit, that's what he called it. And he spoke about, in a gathering that was 75% Jewish, he recognized two Arab Americans. He spoke about the fact that the election of President Obama is not just a celebration for African Americans, but really is a multi-ethnic, multinational celebration. And it really challenged us, somebody from, with an accent from Arkansas, challenged all of us to really, to get out of our cultural silos, and to begin to look at a new vision of what this could be. Now, there are times when I'm very Latino specific, and I want to be very Latino specific. But I think that if we're going to move Cleveland, and for some of us, Cleveland is a great place. Here's somebody who was born in a weather 60 to 70 degrees all year round, and I live 2 miles from Lake Erie. Well, I close, right? But I'm extremely committed that in order for us to move forward, it's going to have to east side and west side. It really has to happen.
Raymond?
Well, one of the things that is interesting about the advent of a crisis, and I was talking to Chris about this, Chris Thompson at the Fund for Our Economic Future, is that a crisis sometimes has an opportunity. And in the element of the solution of the opportunity that President Obama has just adopted in the enactment of the American Reinvestment Act, the stimulus bill, that is $787 billion that will be spent in the next 2 years. And there was a good friend of mine, a businessman, but this is the color of green is always something that is what more can you be looking for right now as African Americans and as Hispanics in the United States than having potentially an African American president and $787 billion that's about to be spent in terms of thinking outside of the box and then creating our own businesses. This is an amazing opportunity right now, and a lot of the solutions that we're talking about when you talk about incarceration, lack of education, it always comes down to the fact that we've been deprived and discriminated against. This is an opportunity. Again, it may not be something that is easily claimed, but it's there. And really, a friend of mine said, what more does Obama need? To put up a sign, say, blacks and Hispanics, come here. Right now, I mean, this is an opportunity.
Why don't we move to the next question, which I'm going to ask Diana to maybe answer first. And that question is simply, if you could improve one challenge facing both the Latino and African American communities, what would it be?
You know where my heart is. I'm going to go to education, and I think that there's a few issues that are impacting our youth. The socioeconomic issue is something that has too many layers, but I think that working together, there's 33,000 Hispanics in Cleveland, and we have about 45,000 in Cuyahoga County. We are the largest population in the state of Ohio in terms of numbers of Hispanic residents. With African American, we have a large population as well, and I think we need to put some efforts on working together toward the education of the youth that we have in the pipeline, making sure that expectations from the teachers and the schools that are educating the majority of our youth are high enough to get them to graduate, and helping parents get involved and have higher expectations and help them also become leaders in the life of their children. Many times our parents, and I can speak from the Hispanic side, but working closely with the Cleveland schools, I've seen it across both communities, is they don't go to the schools. Some of them don't have the time because of multiple issues that they're trying to juggle. But that is a critical point in developing the next generation. And if they don't understand the importance of that, and we don't get that across, there's a high risk.
Terry, you've done many public events, and you talk in your bio about your passion for young people. What comes to mind for you? What's the one issue that, if you could change, that would affect both communities? What would it be?
I would have to say understanding, going back to the original question where we spoke about barriers. I think that geographic barrier has been there for quite some time. I mean, Barbara talked about, not going over to the west side. Traditionally, for me, Cleveland was east side, predominantly African American, west side, predominantly white and Hispanic. And I still have family members who, are like, I'm not going to the west side, or they don't really understand what goes on the west side, and vice versa. I have friends who live in Rocky River who won't go to Whole Foods at University Heights.